August 21, 2022, the 11th Sunday after Pentecost. Now he was teaching in one of the synagogues on the Sabbath. And just then there appeared a woman with a spirit that had crippled her for 18 years. She was bent over and was quite unable to stand up straight. When Jesus saw her, he called her over and said, "Woman, you are set free from your ailment." And when he laid his hands on her, immediately she stood up straight and began praising God. Gospel according to Luke, chapter 13, verses 10 through 13. Unbending love. My wife and I celebrated our 36th wedding anniversary this year. We went to Jamaica, stared with awe into the ocean in the evenings as the sun turned first gold and then crimson, and as the last glimmer vanished over the waves, we watched as the purple shroud of night descended before the tree frogs began to croon their tune. We enjoyed that stay, but it served to remind us once more how our 25th anniversary 11 years before unfolded even more dramatically. For that anniversary, we had vowed to go somewhere extraordinary we both had hoped to visit together. The grand old city we had chosen delights the young and the old alike. The city of light, they call her, and justly so, this city of international acclaim for art, fashion, gastronomy, culture, monuments, and double-decker buses. We resolved that we would fly away to Paris. And so we began in earnest to put aside what we could month to month so that we might finance that trip. We did not wish to spare the expense, so we booked lodging at a luxurious hotel near the heart of Paris' cultural scene. The Intercontinental Paris Le Grand Hotel sits across the street from the Palais Garnier, or the famous Opera House of Paris. Please forgive my French pronunciation. One cool morning, I left Andrea and walked the distance of 1.3 kilometers from the hotel to the Louvre Museum and devoured all I could see over the span of the next 8 hours. That evening, Andrea and I asked the concierge about fine dining beyond the hotel. That evening, we decided we would go. The concierge advised us of a place quietly hidden on a cobbled side street. And when Andrea and I arrived, the waiter seated us, took our order, and poured us the finest vintage of Burgundy wine even King Louis XIV might have approved. After we had relished the appetizers in the leafy salad, our waiter presented the main course of beef bourguignon. The beef, so moist, succulent, and braised in red wine, made us purr, as its flavors of spices, pearl onions, carrots, mushrooms, potatoes, and tomatoes caressed and ravaged our sense of taste. We supped well into the evening before taking our leave of the cheerful chef and his superlative staff. And though it happened so many years ago, that evening's delight has not faded for either of us. Not even the wispy scent of garlic that wafted in the air that night. But Paris also boasts, as many of you know, so many churches, cathedrals, august, perennial, and monumental. I made it my business to visit as many of them as I could. Notre Dame, Sacré-Cœur, and one that delighted me to discover, the Madeleine, a Catholic church named in honor of Saint Mary Magdalene. As cathedrals go, the Madeleine stands out rather oddly. It possesses 3 domes, invisible from the outside, and it has no spires no lofty vaulted ceilings or flying buttresses. Its original architect from the mid-18th century conceived it as a temple on the order of the classic Greek temple. Its Corinthian columns number 52, and its pediment features a risen Jesus Christ at the center, performing his final judgment over all the earth. The altar showcases angels to either side into the rear of a sculpted Mary Magdalene, ascending, straight of spine, resplendent in marble and floating on air. I marveled to see the venerable building, its wooden confessionals, its bronze and gold pieces, its polished tile floors. But more than that, on the day and at the hour that I had visited, a hush settled over everyone as the organist practiced hymns on the celestial organ and its many powerful pipes. I sat in a stupor as the organ wailed and whispered its sublime song of praise. Tears welled in the corner of my eyes, and I began to pray. Just then, a priest appeared from the narthex in a strange, uncanny procession of one. And at first I thought this some display of liturgical practice, a dry run, if you will, of the real service to come on Sunday. But no, that priest had started a worship service even as tourists walked along the outside aisles, taking photos and making notes. The service took us in, and it seemed ever so impolite to bolt for the doors as the holiness of worship began to unfold. I do not recall a choir, but I welcomed the trill and swell of the organ overhead. When the service closed, I noticed what I did not see at first in the dimly lit sanctuary of the dusty cathedral. As the priest walked slowly past me in his lonely procession, I saw the soiling of his white surplice and the threadbare cuffing on his sleeve. He wore whiskers that shadowed his face, and his hair was disheveled, his eyes bleary, as though he had taken a drink of something other than wine before the service began. My spirit sank, for he did not disappoint me, but saddened me instead. I wondered how much stress bedeviled him and bent him over with so many cares to honor a God whose glory no stone or gold or ivory could ever share. I pitied that poor priest and felt a tinge of guilt to burden him with my desire to catch a hint of God's presence in a building so grand, when a tree on a windswept plain would do just as well. When I exited the building, I stood on the stairs to watch the passers-by, children laughing in groups and pairs, women in heels bustling to the nearest shop for shoes by Prada, men pulling a draw on cigarettes pinched between their fingers, and there amid them all stood a lone figure hawking over her walking stick, her bony hand gripping it nearly level with her cheek. She had tied her faded red scarf about her head and under her neck, but one could still see the silted wrinkle of her cheek in the deep furrows in her brow. She wore her age and her infirmity with a hopelessness beyond repair, so I thought. But then it struck me that she had placed herself right there at the bottom of the stair, in full view of the worshippers departing the Madeleine, with the echoes of Amen still in their ears. Alms, I thought I heard her say. Alms for the poor? The question hung in the air, as loud as an organ pipe, bellowing, "Have mercy on us, Lord." I watched her as I would some strange curiosity, and I felt convicted in my shallow empathy. I had no money, neither in coin nor paper, to give her. My helplessness to help her bent me over in my spirit, In my shame, I looked at no one but stared at the ground in pain. I wanted to run, but my legs became stiff, slow, and sluggish. I could hear God cry as I slouched away. My boy, my poor, weak boy, where does your praise go when you see the crippled, the blind, the palsied, the paralyzed, and the folded back? In Luke's gospel, Jesus heals on the holiest day of the week. He does not wait for the next day, but so soon as he sees the bent woman, he calls to her before she has had a chance to notice him. He touches her, blesses her, and she unfolds through grace. Joy overtakes her in the splendor of this divine gift, and she begins to praise God. No church, no cathedral, no temple, no synagogue, no choir, no organ, no incense, no carvings in marble of an angelic host. She stands up straight, kicks her legs, throws away her short stick, and dances in the street, singing, "Blessed assurance, Jesus is mine. Oh, what a foretaste of glory divine." Paris gives me goosebumps. The Seine, the boulevards, the Eiffel Tower, and the Arc de Triomphe. But I remember that woman bent over her wooden cane, and I yearn for Jesus to unbend her and to untwist my stooped and sulking faith. I pray for priests in clean linens and smooth shaven faces, cathedrals cleaned of soot and grime with well-lit spaces. I feel bent over when I dare not look at God because I failed to unfold my faith, to lift the weak of spirit, to feed the famished, yearning for bread before ever a morsel of beef. But it flattens my spirit if we only see that poor woman as some metaphor for our depressed and crippled spiritual condition. She lived out her life for 18 long and tortured years without a repair to her spine, that woman in the gospel. Her vision fixed upon the curb and her condition unshared with any other soul. I want robust health and a vibrant life for every woman and girl. For each man and boy, I yearn for a life flourishing. I want to walk a mile from church to museum and to sit with friends, to consume a meal of vegetables and seasoned fish, to view the upward way of billowing clouds and to hold my head back to witness the distant fire of stars at night. I want to run and jump and play with my grandchildren who dare me to swim in the tepid waters of some lake. I want my body firm and my back straight, my legs nimble and my arms strong and flexed to throw and catch. My body, your body, has so much to do with the spirit that I resent the notion that one eclipses the other. I take it as a fundamental principle that one worships in spirit, yes, and in truth, yes. But what would that matter without a voice to sing, or feet to dance, hands to clap, or a head to shake? But let me speak to one more thing. It concerns the law again, and the strict observance to it over every other consideration. Jesus healed that woman. And for all the good it betokened, the temple leader could only see that Jesus had broken the law because he healed her on the Sabbath. What a small, petty, and pinched faith that is. So pinched and crippled, it fails to look up to the mountains from whence God had handed down the law in the first place. Weighed down, stunted, and shuffling along, the soul cannot exalt under all that law. The law, abstractly understood, breathes formality, requires mindless obedience and exacts a heavy cost for imagining what might exceed the reach of law. Why did Jesus break the law to heal that woman on the Sabbath? You already know the answer. When my grandchildren ask me to play, you know why I smile. And when my wife takes my hand on the plane to soothe her fear, you know why I beam inside. And when we hold a family and friends event at Allen Chapel, you know why we gather to eat and laugh together. When we come to church on a Sunday, we do not do it out of duty, some grim and weary obligation. We do it out of love. God's law need not burden us, for God's law, simply stated, has love at its very heart. A law without love cripples law, and a love without law turns love into fancy. I, for one, choose neither law over love nor love over law. I choose them both, just as I do body and soul. Unbending love unbends the law. Unbend the law, and you will unbend your praise. Amen.